Hello, you're on Initiative Africa. My name is Asha Sampit. Welcome to this new edition of your weekly magazine featuring Africa on the move through smart innovations and initiatives that work. Let's get on with the show with our top stories today. Being a child straddling two worlds, Africa and communist Eastern Europe, and continuing to explore them through literature. This is quite the journey of writer Annie Lulu, born in Romania to a Congolese student father and a Romanian mother, two lovers who chose to migrate to France together. She drew inspiration from this family melting pot for her first novel, The Black Sea in the Great Lakes, a magical fiction between Bucharest, Paris and Kinshasa. She's our guest this week.
It's the story of a girl who's looking for her father, whom she unfortunately never knew, and who goes from east to east, from the Balkans, from Central Europe to Paris, to the east of Congo in Goma, Bukavu, from where she talks to her son who is in her womb and who is about to be born.
Make Africa Sing and Tell Stories, the dream of a Breton guitarist and arranger. Yohann Le Ferrand and several artists from the west of the continent has come to life, an initiative that presents another face of daily lives of people in the Sahel.
And it's true that in Mali we're blessed, and especially with people like Tina or Candy. There you go, that's great.
We head for Accra, and a place still rare in Africa, a library dedicated to African authors and the diaspora to appreciate their contribution to the world literature.
We are a library that focuses on books by writers of African descent. And when we say African descent, we mean African, African American, Caribbean, Black British, Black European.
Fulani flutes, brass, gospel choirs, Tuareg violins and guitars, an outstanding musical conversation that the Breton musician Yohann Le Ferrand and many artists from West Africa began in Bamako has arrived in Paris. From this collaboration with 6 artists was born Yeko, an album of cultural encounter between the North and the South, which he describes as against the current climate of identity and insurmountable borders. Our journalist Nicolas Margeron met him in the middle of a rehearsal with a Malian artist, Salimata Traoré, known as Tina, the daughter of the singer Maimouna Dembele. Take a look, or rather, listen.
Right from the first musical notes, the magic operates as the universes of the two artists blend together instantly. It was a great experience for me and Yohann. He taught me a lot of things. I think in Malian music too, he must have learned a lot of things through me. And it's a beautiful mix between Breton music and Malian music. The album is called Yeko, which literally means everyone's vision in Bambara.
I come from Breton music. I don't feel like I do it in Yeko, but all my friends from Brittany tell me how that sounds Breton. So in spite of myself, well, it's in me, I think, and it logically led me first to jazz, to Afro-American music, Afro-American groups, funk, and then after Mali, it was obvious. The dance, the grooves, in particular the wasulu, which for me is like the ancestor of funk, a little bit. And that's it. There's something I love about music. It's seeing the music move in front of me. So with dancing, it's a great experience as a musician. And it's true that in Mali, we're blessed, and especially with people like Tina or Candy. There you go. That's great.
Each guest artist thus creates a musical portrait in total freedom, with themes borrowed from sub-Saharan people's daily lives. Tina's song is called Dunia, which means the world, the earth in Bambara. In the song, I tell a bit of everything that is going on in the world. Like wickedness, war, brothers and sisters who kill each other. Why don't we love each other? There's more friendship, there's more sincerity in friendship. I express pain, in fact. Why? Why all this? Why can't we? Can't we love each other? Life is so beautiful to live better together. In the Yeko project, the traveling artist has collaborated with 5 other artists who each express their vision of the world through a musical portrait. For the song Yelema, which means change, the Burkinabe artist Kandegira is inspired by natural disasters such as the fires in Australia or the earthquake in China. I said to myself, but while nature is trying to talk to us, why don't we start listening and maybe try to solve the problem? So that's the question. It was the inspiration that came to me like that. And I thought, why don't we take the time and take this pleasure of listening to nature, because it speaks to us and we have to listen to her and know what is needed to help her so that she continues to support us, in fact. Each piece is thus a singular and authentic encounter both in terms of musical creation and personality. It's the diversity, the crossbreeding. For me, that's it. It really fits in there already through our differences. So because he has a fairly calm temperament, he's someone who's very laid back, I would say. It's an earth temperament. It's stability. And I'm rather a little bit more of a water or fire. I don't know me, but in any case, something that moves. So together already these differences creates magnificent artwork like this song. And with this difference, we have managed to find each other. Of course, sometimes it's not easy since I have my own ideas and he has his ideas. So I'm pretty stubborn in the end. But we managed to find the right version anyway, because it's someone who really listens to the artist with whom he works. He's always attentive. Even if he has his proposals, which he gives afterwards, we agree, but he's someone who listens a lot, really to the sensitivity of the other.
Indeed, on this track, I was super happy. It's always a surprise what the guest will bring to it, and it gives additional inspiration, and after a while you have to stop somewhere. So it's already good, you stop.
Well, that's the thing, you have to know when to stop at some point, because each time you want to make it perfect. You know, I thought about that, I thought about us doing this, and so on. If we don't stop for a while, we'll still be there, so that's good.
It's still a good sign. It means that the piece is good.
And perhaps even better than good. With this album, a true musical mirror of these sub-Saharan countries, Yohann Le Ferrand invites you to listen to the hopeful message of a possible and harmonious dialogue between Europe and Africa.
The Black Sea in the Great Lakes is the work of our guest Annie Lulu, and it was crowned last year by the Senghor Prize for the first French-language novel. The war in Ukraine today gives a particular echo to the story, with its heroine torn between a heavy Romanian family heritage and the search for her African roots. Annie Lulu shared with Laurence Soustras and Thierry Schiller some of the keys to grasp her novel.
Annie Lulu, hello. La Mer Noire dans les Grands Lacs received the Senghor Prize for the first francophone and francophile novel. How did you experience this literary success?
It was unexpected. It was also a great source of pride for my parents and me, who were present at the awards ceremony. But it was really incredible because this novel surprised me from the start. The outcome, the journey of my character, Nili, through the hearts of people, of readers, is really extraordinary. I didn't think it would be so well received, and I'm delighted.
La Mer Noire dans les Grands Lacs is the story of a double culture, a double family heritage, and a long quest for African roots. Why did you choose this specific theme?
Pour moi, ce qui était très important, c'est d'avoir une figure féminine.
For me, what was very important was to have a female figure who is a figure of emancipation without making her kind of ideal, a kind of modern courtly novel where there's a reversal of roles. But on the contrary, to have a character with a density, a complexity, and one who can express this pressure between several worlds.
Exprimer ce tiraillement entre plusieurs mondes. Alors, moi-même, je suis roumaine.
I myself am Romanian and Congolese, so European and African from Eastern Europe, and it is still a particular space. It is my mother culture, my native tongue is Romanian, and from the Democratic Republic of Congo, from the eastern part, in particular where my paternal family comes from. And I said to myself, it's pretty rare to explore that in a character, and that's it. But that's where it ends, because this young woman has her own journey. she will look for her father. It's the story of a girl who's looking for her father, whom she unfortunately never knew, and who goes from east to east, from the Balkans, from Central Europe to Paris, to the east of Congo in Goma, Bukavu, from where she talks to her son who is in her womb and who is about to be born. And I wanted to work on the question of transmission, but from a poetic figure, from a singular voice, and I hope I have succeeded.
D'une voix singulière, et j'espère y être arrivée.
Your heroine Nili Makassi's encounter with the Democratic Republic of Congo is intertwined with her love for a man involved in politics and human rights. Is the stranglehold of this permanent danger, this political violence, something you wanted to explore in your second country, your father's homeland?
Il n'y avait pas le choix, pour plusieurs raisons.
There was no choice for several reasons. First of all, the character had a special significance because she was born at the end of a dictatorship, that of Ceausescu, which was extremely harsh for the Romanian people.
C'était un homme qui, pour s'affranchir du joug de Moscou, avait décidé de...
He was a man who, in order to free himself from the yoke of Moscow, had decided to pay off the Romanian national debt in 4 years. And so, when my character was born in 1989, just before the fall of Ceausescu, Romanians were starving. And she's the fruit of a historical and political encounter between an African student who comes from the great post-independence tradition of the non-aligned countries, which sent their elites and their youth to Eastern Europe to build a socialist Africa later on, and a young Romanian student who comes from a particularly painful history, since she is cut off from her roots.
Particulièrement douloureuse, puisque
But she comes from a Romanian Jewish family persecuted during the Shoah. And Nili, my character, is the unlikely meeting of these two worlds.
La rencontre improbable entre ces deux mondes-là. Et lorsqu'elle va finir par...
When she ends up going to her father's land, because basically it's a quest for the father, she will meet figures who are perhaps close to who her father was when he was young.
Sont proches peut-être de qui était son père jeune. Et moi j'avais envie de rendre hommage aussi à ma propre histoire familiale.
And I wanted to pay tribute to my own family history. I wanted to pay tribute to the memory of my grandfather. He was a young Lumumbist from the early days in Bukavu. I wanted to pay tribute to the tradition of resistance that existed in my family, which led young people to turn towards socialism in their youth and have dreams for Africa.
Mais aussi vers le socialisme et avoir des rêves pour l'Afrique. Lorsqu'elle rencontre l'homme qui va être le père de son enfant,
when she meets the man who will be the father of her child, it's by chance. She is drawn into a demonstration in Goma, a rally organized by the Lucha. So how can I write with characters inspired from Congolese youth without paying homage to Luc and Kulula? It was not possible for me without paying tribute to all these young people from citizen movements who gather, but at the cost of their lives.
Qui se mobilisent, mais au prix de leur vie.
The strength, energy, organizational capacity, and extraordinary creativity that they are showing. We, outside the Congo, Congolese from all over the world, can only be in admiration, finally. So, for me, it was very important that Nili's personal trajectory, where there's this political dimension that precedes her on a generational level, could also exist on a narrative level, through this love story with this young man, who is a tribute to Luc and Kulula, who lost his life almost 4 years ago now in the arson of his house in Goma.
Welcome to the second part of our show. A new generation of African writers is now celebrated around the world. The opportunity to revisit the classics of the continent's literature. This is how in Accra, the Anglo-Ghanaian Sylvia Arthur had the idea of developing her personal collection into a library of 4,000 books to pay tribute to Africa's contribution to world literature and to encourage young authors. Our journalist John Awotwi visited this exceptional place. Take a look.
Ghana's burgeoning literary scene has received a significant boost with the introduction of the Library of Africa and the African Diaspora, Ghana's first subscription model library, founded by Ghanaian British writer Sylvia Arthur It's in the heart of Accra.
In Ghana, there is a lack of access to culturally relevant books. And when I say culturally relevant books, I mean books that are reflective of the people who are reading them. So we are a library that focuses on books by writers of African descent. And when we say African descent, we mean African, African American, Caribbean, Black British, Black European.
Sylvia Arthur is a book enthusiast with over 4,000 books in her personal collection. Her collection includes some very rare autographed books by Kwame Nkrumah.
So in this display cabinet here, we have books that are rare and out of print and signed, and they're very difficult to get hold of today. One of them is Kwame Nkrumah's signed autobiography, Ghana My Autobiography, signed by Kwame Nkrumah, the first president of Ghana in 1963. Below that, we have a whole collection of signed first edition Aikwe Amar books. Aikwe Amar, famous Ghanaian writer, probably best known for his 1968 book, The Beautiful Ones Are Not Yet Born. I call him Ghana's Chinua Achebe, but his books are very difficult to get hold of, let alone to get first editions and rares, and so we have a whole collection down there. And then above on the display cabinet here, we have Kamara Lai, The Dark Child. Kamara Lai, Guinean writer.
Sylvia opened the library in 2017, using 1,300 books from her personal collection and making many rare works accessible to Ghanaians for the first time. The library currently serves a broad spectrum of patrons, from professionals to school children and students, as well as musicians. Sylvia aims to use her library to support the country's literary scene, which, while currently struggling, has great potential. She occasionally holds seminars and workshops for writers and other literary creatives, transforming her space into a collaborative environment where Ghanaian writers and book lovers can share ideas.
One of the ways we try to get around people's kind of reluctance to read is that we host a number of events in this space. So it's not just the library that's, you know, a dead space for books. We have music performances, we have spoken word events, we have film screenings. We do a ton of events that bring people into the library so that they're not necessarily coming here for the books initially.
The library operates on a subscription basis. Members pay roughly $8 a month to borrow up to 2 books at a time. Children pay $3.50 and can take 4 books. Foziatu Moro, a graduate student of the University of Ghana, is a patron of the Library of Africa and the African diaspora. Over the last 2 years, she has found the library a useful resource for her academic work and for her own ambitions as a fictional writer.
I see myself writing beyond the academic works that I would ordinarily write if I go into academia. I see myself writing creative nonfiction because then I'm almost around facts all the time, so it's very difficult to move beyond facts to fiction. And being here, I have been introduced to so many forms of creative nonfiction which have widened or broadened my scope about the genre and how, as a historian who deals with fact, can maneuver my way around it and produce creative nonfiction as well. So yes, I aspire to write, and I feel this is like the perfect setting for me.
Most of the people who come to this library, whether they're members of book clubs, whether they're just interested in books and want to be in the space, I would say are mainly women.
The library is a sure way to impact the reading culture of Ghanaians and spur an interest, particularly in Africa's own literary arts.
Let's get back to our guest this week, writer Annie Lulu, for the second part of her interview, The Offer of the Black Sea in the Great Lakes, gives us her perspective on current events in Eastern Europe and tells us about her next novel. Let's listen to her.
Annie Lulu, your country of birth, Romania, is on the verge of the Ukrainian drama. How do you see this current situation?
We are in a time when many people have many opinions on what to think, what to say about what is happening in Ukraine. I'm particularly affected because I was born in Iasi. It's a big city, the closest to the southwest of Ukraine, a few dozen kilometers from the border. Romania has 900 kilometers of border with Ukraine. In fact, there is a deep cultural neighborhood, especially in the Moldavian region, which is my mother region.
Il y a vraiment un voisinage culturel profond, et notamment dans la région moldave, qui est ma région maternelle. En tout cas, il y a cette idée que finalement...
There's this idea that in the end we are still territories caught between two imperialisms, one of which has been very difficult to get out of after decades of struggle.
Après des décennies de lutte, et je pense que pour la Roumaine que je suis,
I think that for the Romanian woman that I am, there is a specific awareness that is not that of the French citizen or even that of the Congolese citizen. For me, it's a pure and hard act of colonization. There you have it. There's no other term. In my opinion, to describe what is happening in Ukraine, than a pure act of colonization. The Ukrainian people are sovereign. I deplore the fact that many of my African comrades are not more interested in the history of Eastern Europe, of the countries of Eastern and Central Europe, in order to understand that there is not a large block of the same culture and the same people around Russia, but rather a multitude of peoples with an imperialist influence in history, which today has terrible consequences, since it leads to the negation of the self-determination of the people.
Elle conduit à la négation de l'autodétermination d'un peuple. Et pour moi, il est très important que
And for me, it is very important that my African comrades, especially those who are involved in citizen movements, who are thinking about the place of the continent in the future and at present, are aware, are lucid and conscious that the Ukrainian people are facing an act of military colonization, economic and cultural colonization, and that even when it does not take place somewhere that is familiar to us, with which we can identify much more quickly on a continent such as Latin America or on the African continent, the fact remains that colonization is nevertheless characterized by a certain number of objective facts. That's it.
So you mean that there is a lack of awareness?
J'ai été choquée par cette idée que
I was shocked by the idea that Putin's regime would be a savior, that this man would allow the African continent to defend its interests more effectively.
Africain de défendre davantage ses intérêts. Je trouve cela d'une
like a sort of messiah. I find this sadly naive and cynical.
C'est à mon avis des réflexions.
In my opinion, these are thoughts that run counter to our heritage of self-determination, independence and freedom on the continent.
De liberté sur le continent.
A fact noticed in Africa is that the thousands of African students in Ukraine found themselves in dramatic situations when they tried to take refuge in neighboring countries. This racism that permeates your novel, at least the beginning, was genuine. Did this surprise you?
Encore une fois, j'ai une réflexion très singulière.
Once again, I have a very singular, particular reflection, which is really my own, on what happened at the Polish border, since we're talking about the Polish border.
De la frontière polonaise. Alors moi, deux choses m'ont choquée. Au-delà du fait que
two things shocked me beyond the fact that African students everywhere in the world are victims of xenophobia or discrimination at some point in their lives.
De xénophobie ou de discrimination. Malheureusement, on peut même plus s'en étonner.
Unfortunately, we can't even be surprised anymore. But fundamentally, there was not what was at stake. We're talking about citizens who are nationals of non-European states who are trying to enter European soil in an absolutely horrific and critical situation with a passport that does not allow them to do so. Why didn't our diplomatic representations, our consular authorities organize themselves beforehand?
Mais enfin, on pouvait anticiper. Voilà. Et on aurait dû le faire. Et c'était l'endroit, le lieu d'ailleurs.
And we should have done so. And this was the place where I think the voice of the continent could have stood out in a very singular way by its neutrality and its concern for its nationals.
Et aussi par le souci de ses ressortissants.
Let's go back to your novel. La Mer Noire dans les Grands Lacs is out in pocketbook form. Will this help your book find a wider African audience?
Je l'espère.
Well, I hope so. First of all, from an economic point of view, the pocket format makes it easier to distribute.
Et Bien entendu, l'ouvrage est présent.
And of course, the book is available in the FNAC network, for example. I know that you can get it at the FNAC in Douala, but it's still a distribution that is not very viable economically.
Qui n'est pas très viable, en fait, économiquement. J'ai pas eu l'idée d'une
I didn't have the idea of a co-publishing at the beginning, nor did I have the idea of a co-publishing for my second novel, which will be published in September. But it's something that's starting to germinate in my mind, and I think it's time now.
Your next novel is coming out in September, as you just said. What experience did you draw from La Mer Noire dans les Grands Lacs that you will apply or have already applied to your second book?
C'est très prosaïque, c'est très trivial.
It's very prosaic, it's very trivial, but I didn't know until very recently how to really write dialogues, for example. I set myself some challenges for my second script. It's very different from the first one. But we still follow a family, a Tanzanian family. We follow it from Arusha in the 1980s to Scotland in modern times, a few years before now.
Quelques années en amont du moment où nous parlons. Et c'est une histoire de transmission.
And it's a story of transmission and a woman dealing with violence. And what I wanted was to renew myself in the technical choices, the narrative choices, not to reproduce another poetic text.
Il fallait absolument que j'aille vers quelque chose de différent.
I absolutely had to do something different. It was essential for me, because the themes of my work are pretty recurrent. The question of female emancipation from a particular, singular point of view, which revolves a lot around motherhood, which is not necessarily a central notion in Western feminist thinking, and then the question of generational transmission and political resistance too.
Et puis la question de la transmission générationnelle, et de la résistance. Aussi.
So all this comes up all the time and is intertwined. Format propose other technical choices and propose other narrative options to my readers.
D'autres choix narratifs à mes lecteurs.
We certainly will look forward to it, Annie Lulu. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, that's it. Initiative Africa is over for today. You can, of course, find Annie Lulu's interview and the replay of our programs on our news website, africaonair.com. And, of course, you can also find us on all our social media channels. Feel free to share, like, and comment with the hashtag Initiative Africa. And don't forget, next week, same time, same channel, I'll see you again with a new edition of Business Africa. Have a great week, everyone, and goodbye.